Is that a map of the world behind my head? I have Africa on my shoulder. It's interesting, if I move this way, that guy moves that way. If I move this way, that guy moves that way. It's interesting how that's a little video dyslexia. Have we started yet? Yep, we have. So I was asked what to title this, so I never know what to title anything. It seems like I talk about something very similar each time, but something, what I've titled it is See Separations. So rather than try to see unity or see that everything is, that we're all one and those kinds of, to actually see the way things are separated. And as meditators, what we're endeavoring to do is take a little separate out of our everyday life, separate away, set a time, get an index card, 7 o'clock, 7 a.m. Every 7 a.m. every morning, I meditate. Separating yourself. Put that on your nightstand or put it on your refrigerator. Put it on your, vanity, your mirror in the bathroom so that you see it. And even if you don't do that, even if you look at that and think, well, I can't, I have to do something else, or I have something else coming up, or I'm late for work, all the other, or I'm too tired, or I'm too, well, you know what I mean. I'm saying that in order to actually train our minds, it seems that we need to find a way, a gentle way, not an abrupt, intense kind of way, which some teachers do this differently, but to separate ourselves gently from the complete three-ring circus that is usually our lives. Some form, probably everyone here has some kind of Lawrence Ferlinghetti back in the 50s wrote a book of poems called Coney Island of the Mind. Probably you don't remember that, or maybe you didn't read it. But it's a very kind of a flowing out of all kinds of images and forms in the poem. And he was one of the beat poets. In fact, he started City Lights Books in San Francisco. So our minds are like that. There's just a constant movement and chatter and commentary on everything. And rather than what we're doing when we sit down to meditate, rather than being just at the mercy of this default that we call our life, we're just defaulted into our work, we're defaulted into our kids, we're default, we just find ourselves, and we have some kind of insight. And anybody here is going to have something along the lines of some kind of insight. Really need to understand what this is. I need to do something where I understand what this incredible vortex is that society, life, culture, our family, our friends is so seductive or so magnetic. We get pulled into it by just a little conversation, and suddenly you're in some kind of a scenario that is being directed by who knows. And so in order to step off that stage of our drama, it seems to be necessary to take some kind of step to separate. So we need to see the separation. We need to see how we could step out of that. Even momentarily, 5 minutes, 10 minutes, 2 hours, 3 hours. Everyone is going to be different. We're all going to do something differently. And the idea there is to actively move the only thing we have control over really is the body. We don't have much say-so over what happens to the mind, a little bit, is to move that body into a position of holding very still. And don't often use this word, but I'm going to use it right now. Just witness what's happening. Just be a viewer, an observer. You're just watching, just observing, just receiving whatever's arising in any of the sense fields, in particular the mind. It just seems that over time, seeing the separations, quite often people will have, so let me say it this way, seeing the separations is very valuable. But quite often the presumption, their preconception, is when we see the separations, we need to do something about it. We need to stop doing that, or stop feeling that way, or some kind of agenda about how it should be. It shouldn't be that way, it should be this way. There's too many things that are happening, they should go away, rather than look at it from the point of view of what? Observation. You have to see, and this is something that I'm going to use here because I think it's fitting. You have to see that the observer, this is something that Jiddu Krishnamurti said back in the 50s when he was telling everybody that they didn't need a teacher. At the same time he was teaching, sitting up and teaching. You don't need a teacher. Listen to me, the teacher, you don't need a teacher. The observer is the observed. So you see the separation of the observer, you see the separation of your everyday life and your meditation practice, and at some point, or points, or maybe no point at all, maybe at some cantaloupe. You probably wouldn't think of that, a cantaloupe, as a point, but that might be how it shows up. It might show up in such a way that you can't even find out when it happened, what time it was, what time of the day it was. Just you suddenly see, or you gradually see, or you imminently see that you're no longer separate from anything. You never were. It's called realization. I highly recommend it. You actually, through looking at the separations, through being with the separations and don't have allegiance to anything, don't join either side, without doing anything, you see that what you thought was the separation, what you thought was two things, is not two things. You thought that the observer and the observed were two different things. This is the teaching of Yogacara, basically understood, and the way I like to put it, not the way Vasubandhu necessarily puts it, but the way I like to say it is the object is over here and the apparent or assumed observer is over here, but the actual observation itself is the only thing that has any reality. There is no object, there is no observer. There's just mind only. There's just perception only. There's just consciousness only. But you have to see the separation without any comment, without anything, without any commentary, without any flow charts, with nothing extra. You have to see that so that you are this far away from seeing that something that you've been looking at all along and laminating an assumption on it. You're actually looking at your mind. There isn't anything that isn't mind. We're not saying that, I'm not saying that this is made up of mind. That's just horse shit. It's not separate from it. It's not separate. And if you realize that, your stress, if you have any, is also not separate. And it's not separate from any of the stress anybody has anywhere. So using the word we had earlier of compassion, if you do have an experience or a feeling or an understanding of what compassion is, there isn't anyone to be compassionate for. There are no beings. There's no beings to save. Talking about the Bodhisattva path, a vow to save all beings. This is a path quality of the Mahayana. Which what that does is, to do that, it causes you to actually look at others. And again, separation. I'm over here, I'm the great Bodhisattva. There's all those beings I'm going to have to save. Looks like a lot of work. I better punch in, get busy. But what the fundamental understanding is you realize there isn't anyone to save. There never was a separation. It was an assumption, and it was based on, quite often, on fear. Fear that things are going to, go clunk in the night. fear that something is wrong and something needs to be repaired, and this is just not right. How many times have you said that? This is just not right. Something's got to be done. No, it doesn't. You just need to see the separation. And what is the separation? The separation is your opinion about what this is. Thinking that you're here, others are over there. I'm very separated from my coffee. I'm not? I was wrong. I'm not separated from it. It's good to be corrected. Here it comes, huh?
Well, I'll be not separate from it in a minute.
Okay, it's getting closer. There it is. That's not coffee. Is that, what is that? That's Bosco. It's Bosco. Who was it that talked about Bosco? Yeah, Bosco is a 1950s powder that we used to put in milk, stir it up and make chocolate milk. It was pretty good. Do you remember fizzies? Yeah, that's another pill that you'd put in water and it would fizz and you'd have a happy fizzies party. Sounds what?
Dirty.
Oh, you have to wash your hands before you do that. Not separate. Separated, but not separate. I'd love to have some questions. This is very boring right now, so I could really perk it up if you'd ask me some really, huh?
Would you really like some?
Yeah, I'd like some coffee.
Okay.
You have a question? Raquel.
Can you talk about separation in relation to how we are in our physical body? Sometimes, I think I told you this.
Yeah. So you're.
Sometimes I feel grounded, and sometimes I feel like I'm driving a vehicle, and I don't feel.
So can you be aware of your the glomeruli in your kidneys?
I don't know.
They're your kidneys,
Yeah.
and you've got probably what, 1 million of them in there. Who counted those anyway? Anytime I hear 1 million, 15 jillion, I want to come on. Okay, who counted those? I want to know. Thank you very much. Very nice of you. Coffee. So there's all kinds of things that are very, very close to you that are part of you, that there is some kind of separation going on. So the whole cosmos or what have you is both separated but not separate. And so your question is?
Are we, by being aware of our body, are we looking to feel less or more separate with our physical?
You're just trying to see what is happening, and you may feel more separated. Another person may feel less separated, and another person may be coming and going. There's no correct way. There's only the awareness itself. What we're trying to do, what I'm trying to teach, is more aware, and how that happens. It looks like, from my experience of doing this for quite a while, and I've done several different approaches, it looks like the best thing to do, we're calling it shikantaza, is hold still and just look. And then what you need to see, depending on your karma, your causes and conditions that arise as your life, your thoughts, all of those things, the very thing that you need to see right now, because of no separation, will show up on the screen of your awareness. But if you're fiddling with it, doing anything extra, if you're doing a mantra, and not that you shouldn't do mantras. I have some people do mantras because their mind is spinning. And but generally speaking, I teach the highest practice first, which is just look at it. And then from there, we might have to drop down to different levels. When I say drop down, I don't mean wrong. I'm just saying some people need to do another kind of practice. But we start at just this, nothing else. And that's a hard one to do, because when you're just sitting here and all your senses are open, it's like, especially if it's for hours and hours, it gets kind of aggravating, irritating. And we end up adding to that by saying, okay, what should happen? What's going to happen? And even that is part of what is arising. One might have to go through that. It seems to take a whole lot of it. So the whole idea of separation is to look at anything that is separation. You can say that your commentary on your mind is separating you from what your mind is, or from what is actually happening there. It's all over the place. We all have all kinds of stories to validate or justify or condemn or get rid of. We're always adding something on. Whatever's there, instead of it's just that, we do something with it. We push it down, we cover it up, we explain it, we write a dictionary definition. Jim?
Looking at the distance,
Yes.
space. Does that distance go away when it's seen?
So it may or it may not. It's just a way of, there's all kinds of distances. You can look at the distance between, there's a distance between this and that. There's a distance between the striker and the zabuton. And there's a distance between this person, a visual awareness, and that laptop. So the whole idea of space is something we just take for granted. We just assume that I'm here, you're over there. There's some kind of really big interval, and for someone who's out in the yard or someone who's in Chicago, there's an incredibly huge interval happening there. And the relative situation is, yes, it's true. There's space between the fingers. There's a distance between us and other people, other cities, other places. But the fundamental understanding is nothing is separate. But first one has to see the spaces. This is why I often say when you're sitting and facing the wall that you could actually just validate or register or acknowledge that you're 26 inches away from the wall or whatever it may be. You just see that, you see the texture of the wall. Very simple. Ho hum. You see the space between you and the wall. You register that. You hear sounds, and you'll notice that when you're looking at this, that the sounds will actually cause the visual awareness to drop. And then if you deliberately come back to the visual awareness, then your awareness of sounds tends to fade. So everything tends to move around like that. And not telling you anything new, but the distance is relative. It's like the one that I often talk about is, and it's nothing you haven't seen, but it could be looked at more closely, is the distance between here, I'm looking down, and if I go outside, look at the ground, and if I look up, it doesn't end. It's an astonishing experience to look down and see the ground and look up and see endless. There isn't anything ending. There's things out there, stars, planets, but space is pretty astonishing. It's the same thing as they can't seem to, physicists go the other direction and go down into things. They can't find out what anything is. They can't find out what it is. They know something's there, but they can't. The whole, what I talked about earlier was the particle and the wave. Is it a particle or is it a wave? So it seems to be very valuable to one's psychology, one's thinking process, one's tendency to maybe to get, conventional word is depressed or just bummed by everything, or other times feel very elated for no reason, feel really up and really positive, and you might have things triggering you. You might feel that way and not have any idea. You might think, did somebody slip me a Mickey? Is that what they call them? Somebody has slipped me a Mickey Mouse. So they don't do that anymore. That's back in the 40s, right? Back, huh?
Now it'd be a roofie.
A roofie? Did you slip me a roofie? What is that?
Mickey.
Huh? It's a Mickey. Yeah, there's another one of those roofies. So sometimes we look at that, and this is why it seems to be so valuable. Look at all the people that we all know, the hundreds of people. Any one of us know hundreds of people, and we know people that are so incredibly separate in their ideas, their lives, their opinions, their values. It's just astonishing. We talked about that a little earlier. Just in our own family, there's a person that's way over here doing this, and another person's way over there. You know, it might be in our own living room. They're so different. We're doing what we're doing, and if you're in this room, you probably have a strong interest in training your mind and trying to find out what is this whole thing of being a human being? What does this mean? What does it mean for me? Not some philosophy about life, not even Buddhism. You know, just you. What does it mean when you sit down and watch who you are and who this is? I can tell you right now, when I look at who this is, I don't see anybody. And not only that, and this may be a little surprising to you, but I don't see anybody out there either. But that's not to take anything away from you and your experience and your realization, your understanding of what is true. The thing that I recommend all the time to everyone, over and over again, they'll listen to me or let me, or if they come into this room and sit down, and I come in and somebody gives me some coffee, not water, coffee. Tried. I'm going to not say, this is how it is, that's what you should think, this is what you should believe. I say, find out. Huh? What do I think about what?
What do you see?
Not separate. I see separation. People separating themselves into their own ideas, opinions, beliefs, feelings, and what they're. So I see the separations, but fundamentally, I don't see.
Are you using the real word see?
See or what?
Visually see.
It's a little bit of seeing. Some of it's seeing, but also it's just not separate from anything. So it may show up in thinking, feelings, thoughts. Could show up. Basically, I'm pretty a visual person, so it's quite a bit of it is. Battery is low. That's kind of a nice blue band across there. Your battery is low. I feel accused. I thought I was plugged in. Plugged on, unplugged. Where is Unyo?
She's watching you on TV.
Hi. Low battery. I have a nice fly that really wants to fly in my ear.
Here's a question from Sheldon.
From who?
Sheldon, the blue.
Sheldon in, where's he at?
Union City.
Union City, Michigan, says, if everything is not separate, is everything all one immense object? No, it's not.